The confusion that mostly arises about Hinduism, especially in the minds of those who don't belong to it, is that it doesn't have a proper structure. All the other religions, they have a certain structure and form. And we cannot put Hinduism into those neat categories and labels that I gave you. A holy book, a prophet, some main tenets, central emphasis. We cannot put Hinduism in those categories because Hinduism encompasses and exceeds all these categories. And like I said, even within Hinduism, people do not have clarity about this. So let us try to understand why we have this bewildering variety, this complexity in Hinduism. Why we have this? That religious teaching was given out in the battlefield of life. That's a unique example in the history of the world. A religious spiritual teaching, one of the highest spiritual teachings, is being given out on the battlefield in the field of action. So religion is not something detached from life. So that is what the emphasis of the Gita is.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to Yes Talks. The title of today's session is Making Sense of Hinduism. Our guest speaker today is Mr. Narendra Murty. Narendra Murty is a former divisional manager in the life insurance industry with over 30 years of passionate study in various religions and philosophies, both Eastern and Western. He has authored several books, including Eating His Money, The Antics of a Metaphysical Clown, An Odyssey of the Mind, Journeys in the Modern Mindscape, The Religion of Wonder, and An Oak Tree in the Garden, Exploring the World of Zen. Currently, Narendra sir serves as a research associate at Sri Aurobindo Society in Pondicherry and writes monthly for their online journal Renaissance. Welcome, Narendra sir. Thank you so much for joining us today on Yes platform. Looking forward to the session, sir.
Thank you, Arunima. Uh, Namaste, Ramesh Bhaiya. And thank you once again for giving me this opportunity. Uh, it's always a great privilege to be a part of this Yes Talks platform. Uh, so, without any further loss of time, I'll go into the subject matter. Today's subject matter is titled Making Sense of Hinduism. Now, why is this question arising at all? That where is the need to make sense of Hinduism? That's because for most people, especially those who don't belong to the tradition, for them, Hinduism is very confusing because of its diversity, because of its complexity. It's very confusing for them. That doesn't mean that it's very crystal clear to us and it makes perfect sense to us. It doesn't. Even for Hindus, the idea that they have about Hinduism is not very clear. But they go about it because they're born in the tradition. So, and we hear eminent people, and we have heard it so many times. Things like Hinduism is not a religion; it's a way of life. Now, honestly speaking, I never understood what this meant. I would ask the participants if any of them understand what is meant by this, that Hinduism is not a religion, it's a way of life. I would request them to tell me about it. I would like to learn from them that Hinduism is not a religion, it's a way of life. Everything is a way of life. Christianity is a way of life. Islam is a way of life. Buddhism is a way of life. So all these are way of lives. So I don't see whether this brings any clarity to the issue. Rather, I think it confuses the issue that Hinduism is not a religion; it's a way of life. We hear it a lot these days. So I've never understood what this means. Probably I would ask Ramesh Bhaiya whether he can shed some light on this. Anyway, so The confusion that mostly arises about Hinduism, especially in the minds of those who don't belong to it, is that it doesn't have a proper structure. All the other religions, they have a certain structure and form. Hinduism doesn't have that. For example, I've taken only four aspects, which are very prominent in the three great religions in the world in terms of numbers. One is Christianity, which has about 3 billion adherents. Then we have Islam, which has about 2 billion. And then we have Buddhism, which has about 1 billion. So, in terms of numbers, these three are the great religions of the world apart from Hinduism. So, all of these religions have a certain structure and form. For instance, Holy Book. Christianity has the New Testament of the Bible as their holy book. Islam has the Quran, and Buddhism has the Dhammapada. So they all have that holy book as their common, foundation of the religion. Then they have a prophet. Christianity has Jesus, Islam has Muhammad, and Buddhism has Buddha. They have a prophet. Then there are some main tenets of these religions. For instance, in Christianity, they believe that Jesus is the Son of God and man is born in sin, and our surrender to Jesus would uh, would would make Jesus redeem us from that original sin, the fall of man, as you know. So this is one of the basic tenets of Christianity, that man is born in sin, and Jesus he died to redeem us from that sin. Then in Islam we have those five tenets of Islam, that what they call the declaration of faith, Shahada, they call it, that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. That is the first tenet. Then they have namaz, doing namaz for 5 times a day. Then they have alms giving. Then they have that 1 month fasting during the month of Ramadan. And all devout Muslims are expected to visit Mecca at least once in their lifetime, which is called Hajj, as you know, the pilgrimage. So these are the main tenets of Islam, the five tenets. And then in Buddhism, we have the Four Noble Truths, which Buddha gave out in his first teaching. And the taking refuge in the three jewels of Buddhism, that is the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. You know that Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami, and all that. So these are the main tenets of these three religions. And there is one central emphasis of these religions. In Christianity, the central emphasis or the mode of practice is devotion and prayer or surrender. So that is the path of devotion, you can say, Christianity, prayer and devotion, central emphasis. Then in Islam, we have submission to the will of Allah. In fact, the word Islam means that only, submission to the will of Allah. That is the main central emphasis. And in Buddhism, we have the Noble Eightfold Path, and the goal being nirvana, the attainment of nirvana. So that is the central emphasis of Buddhism, and meditation is the path. The Noble Eightfold Path is basically a path that leads to meditation and ultimately achievement of nirvana. Hinduism has no such structure. That is where it confuses the others. We have no such structure. We don't have a holy book. We don't have a holy book. We have holy books galore. The Vedas, the Upanishads, the Gita, the Puranas, the Sutra literature, like the Yoga Sutras, the Brahma Sutras. And even our epics are sacred to us, Ramayana and Mahabharata. In fact, Mahabharata is called the fifth Veda, Pancham Veda. They are sacred to us. And we don't have a prophet. We have a galaxy of them. We have Vedavyasa, we have Valmiki, and we have the great masters. You know, in India, we have the 6 systems of philosophy. Shadadarshan, it is called. 6 systems. Gautam Rishi, he gave the Nyaya philosophy. Then Kannada, he gave the Vaisheshika philosophy. Then Kapila, he gave the Sankhya philosophy. Patanjali gave the Yoga Sutras. Jaimini gave the Mimamsa school of thought. It is also called Purva Mimamsa. And then we have Vedanta. So All these masters, whether it was Gautam, Kannada, Kapila, Patanjali, or whoever, they are all our prophets. Then we have the great stalwarts within Vedanta who founded three schools, the schools of Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, and Dvaita. That is Shankaracharya, Ramanuja, and Madhva, respectively. Then in the Bhakti tradition, we have a whole lot of saints, Kabir, Nanak, Chaitanya, Vallabhacharya, Tukaram. They are all our prophets. We can't say this person is our prophet and the other is not. They are all our prophets. Hinduism acknowledges all of them. And coming to the modern day, we have the modern day masters, Ramakrishna, Raman Maharshi, and people who express the ancient knowledge in modern terminology, the two greats of our modern times, Swami Vivekananda and Sri Aurobindo. They are all our prophets. So we cannot leave anyone out. We cannot say that I believe in Swami Vivekananda and Valmiki or Vyasa is not a prophet for me. Hindus never say that. So they are all our prophets. And there is no central emphasis. Like in the other religions, we don't have a central emphasis. We have the gross materialism of the Charvakas. It is the philosophy of materialism and hedonism. Then we have the ritualistic, religion of the Purva Mimamsa that I talked about. And this Yoga Sutras, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and Kapila's Sankhya, Advaita Vedanta of Shankara. Tantra, we have the path of Tantra, left hand and right hand path of Tantra. We have Kashmir Shaivism. We have Ramana's self-inquiry. Where is the central emphasis? No central emphasis. This wide range, from materialism, the gross materialism of the Charvakas, to the subjective idealism of Nirakar Brahma or formless Brahman, which is there in the Vedanta. This range is so vast, it is so diffused, that it is impossible to define Hinduism. We cannot define it. And we cannot put Hinduism into those neat categories and labels that I gave you. A holy book, a prophet, some main tenets, central emphasis. We cannot put Hinduism in those categories. Because Hinduism encompasses and exceeds all these categories. So outsiders, especially those who do not belong to the tradition, they ask us, who is your prophet? What is your holy book? What is your creed? And we come up with a multiple answers. And they get confused. They don't understand. They ask us, what is your defined form of worship? Whole lot of forms of worship within our tradition. So this bewildering variety of Hinduism, almost, I would say, almost bordering on chaos, the outsiders find very difficult to understand. And like I said, even within Hinduism, people do not have clarity about this. So let us try to understand why we have this bewildering variety, this complexity in Hinduism. Why we have this? Like I said, we do not have one prophet, we do not have one holy book. So the vast range that encompasses Hinduism. Let us try to understand that why it is that way. From the lowest to the highest, from the atheism of Charvakas to the worship of nature and even animals also. Though animism, those elements are also present in, like you say, Go Mata. We worship the cow, Go Mata. So these elements. Recently, the Chhat Puja was held. Especially, it is very popular in Bihar and UP. Chhat is basically the worship of the sun god. And Chhat Maya is basically, she's the dawn, Usha, what has been called in the Rig Veda as Usha, dawn. So Chhat Puja is basically a worship of nature, of the sun god and the dawn, Usha. So from here to the philosophy of the Upanishads, this range is due to the idea. There's an idea called adhikara in our tradition. To translate it simply, we can call it capacity or eligibility. Hinduism believes that the capacity and eligibility of human beings, they differ widely, and the capacities are vast and very different from each other. For example, we cannot, in Hinduism, we do not put people into a straitjacket of prayer and devotion as in Christianity. That is the only path that is offered to all the adherents of Christianity, whether they are suited for it or not, temperamentally. In Buddhism, they are put into the straitjacket of meditation, on the path of meditation, of inward withdrawal and all that. That person may not be suitable for that kind of a path, temperamentally. For instance, Arjuna, he was a warrior in the battlefield. Let us ask ourselves what a Christian teacher would have told Arjuna in such a situation. Arjuna was saying, I do not want to fight this battle. I do not want to fight this war. It involves killing people. The Christian teacher would have been very happy. Yes, very good. You are talking about peace, and this is what we are. We are talking about love. Jesus died. Jesus died himself to save humanity. That is what we should do. Good. Give up war. The Christian teacher would have been very happy. The Buddhist teacher would have been very happy. You would have said, good. Give up ahimsa. Very good. You're talking about ahimsa. That's a fantastic path. That is what we are talking about. Non-violence. Give up your violence and war. Sit in meditation. Go into your inner withdrawal. The Buddhist teacher would have been very happy. But Krishna is a very different kind of teacher. He's not asking him to give up his war and fighting and all that. He's giving a very entirely different lesson, because Arjuna temperamentally is not suited for the path of devotion or the path of meditation, because he is an active, dynamic man of the world. And for him, the right prescription is available in Hinduism, in the form of, and it came in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. It was given out, that religious teaching was given out in the battlefield of life. That's a unique example in the history of the world. A religious spiritual teaching, one of the highest spiritual teachings, is being given out on the battlefield, in the field of action. So religion is not something detached from life. So that is what the emphasis of the Gita is. After all, every time Krishna is telling, Uttishtata Parantapa, get up, fight, yujasva, being established in yoga, you do your war and all that. So this idea that people are different in their temperaments and in their mental makeup, to say simply, this adhikara is based on that people are vastly different in their temperaments and in their needs and capacities. And that is why different forms of self-development has to be there. So I'll just read one or two lines from Sri Aurobindo's writings, and I'll show you towards the end of my presentation the actual slides where we go into with a bit more depth. So what Sri Aurobindo is saying about this is, Indian religion took as a guiding idea its perception of the varying natural capacity of man, adhikara, the natural capacity of man. For a devotional person, the devotional religion is also there. Bhakti Yoga we have. The path of devotion is there. For the philosophically minded, for the cerebral person, we have the path of knowledge, Jnana Yoga. But for Arjuna, the warrior, the dynamic person, what we have is the path of action, Karma Yoga. That also we have. So it all depends on the temperament of the seeker. So, and Sri Aurobindo says, avoiding the errors of the religions that impose a single dogmatic and inflexible rule, like I gave the examples of Christianity, prayer and devotion, in Buddhism, meditation, in Islam, the submission to the will of Allah. So, avoiding this inflexible rule, every man, regardless of the possibilities of his nature, it tried to draw him gently upward, to help him grow steadily in religious and spiritual experience. This is what adhikara means. To draw him up gently, where it's actually trying to bring him up from where he is standing right now, not demanding something of which he is not capable. If you ask Arjuna, you give up and go into meditation and follow the eightfold, noble eightfold path and go towards nirvana, Arjuna simply is not meant for that. So in other religions, we have this, statement of a high ideal, non-violence, ahimsa, devotion and surrender, nirvana. And if you are not up to that level, to reach that level, then you are kind of left out, because there's a huge gap between where you are standing and those high ideals like nirvana. So Hinduism takes this whole thing into consideration. It doesn't divide people into the saved and the damned. I'm reading the words of Sri Aurobindo. The saved and the damned, the believer and the infidel, are the two categories set constantly before us. All between is a confusion, a tug of war. Sri Aurobindo is saying this. So, because that conflict builds in you, because you are not up to that high ideal of total prayer and devotion and surrender, of the noble eightfold path, right concentration, right mindfulness, nirvana. You're not up to that path. So there builds up an inner conflict in you. Hinduism takes this into consideration. Adhikara, your capacity, your individual capacity, and your temperament. And the line where this quote ends, I'll be showing you this slide at the end of my presentation. Each needs to be dealt with according to his nature and his soul nature. This is what Sri Aurobindo is saying. So this explains the bewildering variety of Hinduism. That because human nature, human temperament, human capacity is so varied and so complicated, there's a path for every complication. There's a path for every seeker, depending on his temperament. So this is the, you can say the logic of the complexity of Hinduism. And we find Western critics, they sometimes put some questions like, how can you have some lofty metaphysics like Advaita Vedanta and all that, and also you stoop to the worship of images and stones and trees and animals? How can these two coexist in the same religion? Westerners, because they don't understand this. To answer this, Sri Aurobindo says, again, he says that building up the spiritual life is like building up a edifice, a building, or a temple, say. To build that temple, you need scaffolding. You have workmen, they stand on the poles and the bars and they build the concrete structure. So this is the analogy Sri Aurobindo gives. He says man needs lower supports and stages of ascent. He asks for some scaffolding of dogma, worship, image, sign, form. Initial stages, we need that. We need images to focus our concentration, to project our Shraddha onto something. We need that, scaffolding to build that structure of spiritual life. And only when the temple is completed can the supports be removed, the scaffolding disappear. Once the temple is built, then we do not require the scaffolding. We do not retain that. We simply dismantle that because that is not required. Because now the firm temple of the strong and firm temple of spiritual life has been constructed. So that scaffolding is no more required. The initial supports to our faith, for our Shraddha, whether it's the image or the mantra or the ritual, all these, the mythological stories to illustrate spiritual truth, all these are not required anymore once you attain that height of spiritual knowledge. And Sri Aurobindo says this complexity that we had, we never gave any name to this religion. Actually, Hinduism, you'll be surprised to know, none of our scriptures, they mention the word Hinduism. Though in fact, I deliberately chose the word Hinduism today to emphasize this point. The word Hinduism doesn't occur in any of our scriptures. It is not a word that has come from our own tradition. This has come from the Westerners, and it is said that the Persians used to refer to the people who lived on this side of the Sindhu River. They called them just Hindus. But that has no religious connotation. They call them, okay, these people live beyond the river Sindhu, so they are Hindus. That has got nothing to do with religion. This Hinduism, this connotation, religious connotation, it came along with the Westerners. And it's hardly 200 years old, this name, Hinduism. Nowhere in our tradition you would find this name. What has been called is Sanatan Dharma, the eternal Dharma. And Sri Aurobindo is saying it gave itself no name because it set itself no sectarian limits. It claimed no universal adhesion. It set up no narrow path or gate of salvation. And it had some right to speak of itself by the only name it knew, the eternal religion, Sanatana, because it is based on eternal principles, universal principles. And that is why Sanatana. There was no name to it. That's why, because it is based on eternal principles, it has been called Sanatana Dharma. So now, in spite of all this complexity and diversity and complicate what to say, the huge number of paths that are there is one central idea that is there in, let us still use the word Hinduism, that is there in Hinduism, which says that everything has the divine as its base. The divine is the base of everything, of the material life as well as the spiritual life, which has been expressed in that powerful formula, Ishavasyam idam sarvam. This world is inhabited by the Lord. Whatever we see in the world, yat kimcha jagatyam jagat, whatever we see in the world is inhabited by the Lord. So everything has the divine as its base. And we are not able to perceive that because of our ignorance and delusion. And one more idea, which I'll be coming. So after this, let's say, now Sri Aurobindo says there are three fundamentals of Hinduism. Three fundamentals. I'll be showing you the slide again. That is the idea of one existence, whom sages gave different names. This has been encapsulated in that famous saying, Ekam Sat, Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. So this is the first one fundamentals, you can say, of Hinduism. We may not have that neat little categories of holy book, prophet, and main tenets and central element. We may not have that, but there are three fundamentals which we have, and that is common to all the varied parts of Hinduism. One is the idea of one existence whom sages give different names. We have called it with different names. We have called it Brahman, we have called it Ishwara, we have called it Krishna, Shiva, we have called it Shakti, all these things. Different names we have called it. That is one. Then the second basic idea is manifold way of man's approach to the divine. There are multiple ways to approach this divine. Not one way, multiple ways, manifold ways. This, has been in modern times. Ramakrishna gave his famous formula of Jotomot Totopot. As many views, so many paths. So this is the second fundamental, that the divine can be approached in manifold ways. Because the temperaments are different. And that is why you see the existence of the high and the low, this huge body of images, rituals, and mythology. They're all stages of our growth. We have the Ramayana, Mahabharata, the epics, 18 Puranas. Our mythology has been codified in 18 Puranas. Vishnu Puran, Brahma Puran, Padma Puran, Markandeya Puran, 18 Puranas are there. And this this maddening variety of images, rituals, and mythology, it's actually difficult to decode that and to penetrate into the deeper meaning of all that. uh, I have written a book on this. I would refer you, if you are interested, to go into that subject. I have a book on this, A Grain of Sand, which came out this year, which kind of explains the symbols which have been used in the image worship rituals, mythology, and the symbols that have been used in the Upanishads and the Rig Veda. So you can take a look if you are interested in that. Anyway, going to the third fundamental is divine can be approached by a piercing through inner and outer nature. That means we have to bring a transformation in our nature. And that can happen. Okay, even if we bring our transformation, how do we actually reach the divine? And here comes the another fundamental of Hinduism, that each man is divine. Man is divine by nature, and that is why he can attain divinity. It is not that he's trying to reach an impossible goal. He can reach the divinity because he himself is divine. That divinity is his innate nature. So this is one of the fundamentals of Hinduism that it says. And bringing out that divinity, inner unfoldment, that happens through an inner unfoldment and a path of discipline. We call it yoga. Different forms of yoga are there. We have like bhakti yoga, karma yoga, raja yoga, that is the path of meditation. Jnana yoga, that is the path of philosophy and intellectual inquiry, based on our swabhava, nature, and adhikara, our capacity. So this is what we have different, approaches to our to the divine. Man can reach the divine, man can attain the divine because man himself is divine. That is a very fundamental and uh, powerful statement that Hinduism makes. Hinduism doesn't say that man is a sinner, as in Christianity. Man is a sinner and he's born in sin, and only Christ can redeem the sin of man, and he gave up his life to redeem man from his sin. Hinduism doesn't say that. In fact, when Swamiji went to the United States, he called he in a bold declaration. He said in one of his lectures, "I refuse to call you sinners. You who are the heirs of immortal bliss. Srinvantu Vishwe Amritasya Putra." That is what is there in our scriptures. That listen, O heirs of immortal bliss. That is how the scriptures have addressed us. And that is what Swamiji told the American audience, that I refuse to call you sinners, because you are the heirs of immortal bliss. That is what our tradition says. That man himself is divine. He is the child of immortal bliss, Amrita Putra. So for Hinduism, all children are the children of the divine. This is the greatness. This is the Catholicity. This is the universality of Hinduism. So before I finish, I would like to share some slides with you where the ideas that I talked about, just a reaffirmation of that. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, sir. Yeah, just now. Yeah.
Okay. So this is my first slide, the subject of my talk. This is where the other religions, they resemble each other and they drastically differ from Hinduism. Like I told you, the holy book, the prophet, the main tenets, and central emphasis. All the major religions of the world have a definite structure in respect of holy book, main tenets, central emphasis. We already discussed this. Now, this concept of adhikara. Indian religion took as a guiding idea its perception of the varying natural capacity of man. Adhikara. It provided in its system means by which each man, regardless of the possibilities of his nature, and evolutionary stage, the call, the pressure, the influence. It's a continuation of that. In life, there are infinite differences between man and man. Some are each needs to be dealt with according to his nature and soul stature. What I told you, these are the exact words of Sri Aurobindo. And there, where we talk about, why this reason why the highest and the lowest coexist in Hinduism. Man does not arrive immediately at that highest inner elevation. And if it were demanded from him at once, he would never arrive there. At first, he needs lower supports and stages of ascent. He asks for some scaffolding of dogma, worship, image, sign, form, symbol, some indulgence and permission of mixed half natural motive on which he can stand while he builds up in him the temple of the spirit. Only when the temple is completed can the supports be removed, the scaffolding disappear. So in bits and parts, I already told you about this. This is his idea that why the low and the high coexist in Hinduism. Why we have nature worship as well as we have something like Advaita Vedanta. Now about this Sanatan Dharma. You see what Sri Aurobindo is saying about this. It gave itself no name because it set itself no sectarian limits, set up no single narrow path or gate of salvation, a continuous enlargement. See, an immense, many-sided, many-staged provision for a spiritual self-building and self-finding. It had some right to speak of itself by the only name it knew, the eternal religion, Sanatan Dharma. So it is not actually Hinduism. It is Sanatan Dharma. This is a name which has been hoisted on us. Okay. So now we come to the three fundamentals of Hinduism, as given out by Sri Aurobindo. The idea of the one existence of the Veda to whom sages give different names. In other words, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti, the truth is one. The sages call it by different names. This is an example. That he didn't say this one. This one I added here. So the idea of the one existence of the Veda to whom sages give different names. This is one fundamental. That it is one existence. Second basic idea is the manifold way of man's approach to the eternal and infinite. The infinite is full of infinities, and each of these infinities is itself the very eternal. So just because we are having different approaches doesn't mean that we are not approaching the eternal. They're all paths to the eternal. And the third fundamental. The supreme or the divine can be approached through a universal consciousness and by piercing through all inner and outer nature. That or he can be met by each individual soul in itself, in its own spiritual part, because there is something in it that is intimately one, or at least intimately related to the one divine existence. That is because we are all divine beings. Divinity is our nature. This is what is meant here. We can approach the divine because we are the divine. And this Swamiji also has, put in his own way. Each soul is potentially divine, but you have to make it divine. You have the potential. Potentially, it is divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity within by controlling nature, external and internal. Do this either either by work, that is karma yoga, or worship, that is devotion, or psychic control, that is raja yoga, control of the mind, the path of meditation. That also we have the Buddhist approach, you can say, and philosophy, the path of religion, path of speculation and intellectual speculation and knowledge, pursuit of knowledge and all that. Jnana yoga, path of philosophy. Buy one or more or all of these and be free. You can combine them, you can use all of them, and you have to be free. This is the whole of religion. Doctrines or dogmas or rituals or books or temples or forms are but secondary details. This is what Swamiji says. So, this is all, and this is the book I talked about. If any of you are interested in learning more about our symbols and images, this is the book. It's available on Amazon. You can take a look. So that's all from my side. I would invite some discussions and questions from your side. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Narendra sir, for yet another interesting and really enlightening session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Participants, if you have any questions, please go ahead. You can unmute yourself and speak up, or you can put your questions or sharings in the chat box. Please go ahead.
Namaskar, namaskar.
Ji.
My name is Ojaswini. Sir just gave the example of Arjuna, and he said that Arjuna by nature was a warrior. So Krishna asked him not to, not to give up and to fight. But sir, finally, Lord Krishna told him that Sarva Dharmam Parityajya Mamekam Saranam Braja. Means that he finally advised him that surrender and forget all other your duties and moralities. So surrender is always there in Hinduism. That's what I believe.
Yes, you're right. It's a very good point. In fact, in different parts of the Gita, Krishna talks about devotion. He asks him to become a bhakta. He asks him to become a jnani. He asks him to become a dhyani. All these things he said, and finally he says, "Surrender to me." But the key point is, do your work. Do not renounce your work. Surrender doesn't mean that you renounce your work, the given work allotted to you in the field of action, but you work with a inner detachment, with an inner surrender to the divine. That is the central emphasis. Central emphasis is not surrender to me and give up work. Surrender to me and do your work. And Krishna is saying, you will not incur any sin. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami. Ma shuchar. Don't worry, don't grieve. I'll relieve you of all your suffering and grief. Just do your work. So Krishna is saying in different parts. He's saying, become a jnani, become a karma yogi, become a bhakta. Everything is saying. So now, if you look at it logically, do we have only a dynamic nature? No, we have our intellect. We have the intellectual nature too. We have our emotions. We have an emotional nature too. So all that has to be directed towards the divine. So it's not an exclusive path. Karma yoga for Arjuna may be a path to begin his journey, but he has to combine that with Buddhi yoga. If you read the second chapter, that is the yoga of intelligent will, it has to be combined with Buddhi yoga, it has to be combined with Bhakti. And finally, the last lesson or the last, instruction that Krishna is giving you, surrender to me and do your work. So all these things are emphasized. But there has to be a starting point. If you are a person of emotional temperament, going by the theory of adhikara, then you have to start with emotion only. With your, because that is your main nature and temperament. You have to start with devotion, and then other things would come. You have to be active in the world. You have to do your karma by dedicating your actions to the divine. All those things will come. And knowledge you gain along. When bhakti is there, knowledge comes automatically. They all come together. That is why we talk about integral yoga. So it's not one exclusive path of karma yoga or bhakti yoga. It's an integral, path. And Krishna is, he shows all the path, and he says repeatedly, be a bhakta, be a karma yogi, everything. So all those paths are there. It's not that only surrender. That is the final lesson he gives. But along with that is attached the instruction, karma. Do the karma. That also is there. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Participants, anyone else wants to ask or share anything, please go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, I think it was a great session, and I think it's very, very necessary because I think the way we look at different religions vis-a-vis Hinduism, I think one needs to really have some mastery, some level of mastery, like Narendra ji has, to really dispel a lot of myths, and also a point of view in terms of what Sanatani stands for. Uh, as a matter of fact, I think we need to have more and more sessions like this, so much so that there's tremendous amount of clarity. Although I also believe that I think as part of our manifestations, Hinduism, the way we manifest, and I mean what Narendra ji says, scaffolding, right? I think a lot of it is lost in that. You know, a lot of it is lost in that, and people kind of term Hinduism as the most unintelligent way of living life. With the 3,000 odd different gods and rituals, dogmas, and all of that, right? Um, so I think one needs to really make sense, and that's where I think the symbols and symbolism and all of that really comes in. But it has to be explained to them. I mean, what is the method in the madness? So unlike I mean, in the sense that would we all want to be part of spiritual democracy, or do you really want to be a part of a, an army regime, where the diktats are there that, you just have this particular mantra to chant, Allahu Akbar, or any other, and the Christianity stuff. So, I mean, we all want to belong to the spiritual democracy where we really need to find ourselves. I mean, whether it's inward, outward, what are we really are here for? So I think everybody is a seeker in that sense. But I think the answers that we get, in other forms of religion, which is very direct and very straightforward. So the maximum chunk actually goes in there, and that's the reason why I said that Hinduism, practicing Sanatana Dharma, requires tremendous amount of knowledge and appreciation as to why you're living it, the way you're living it, right? So unless you really don't get the meaning behind what you're doing, what the rituals that we have, uh, it doesn't make sense, and it kind of gives you a feeling that I think we are a very unintelligent sort of people. Uh, that every day there's some ritual or the other that we go in for and things like that. So I think this explanation has really dispelled why the need for scaffolding, and why the need for so much of exploration. I mean, we can tolerate monotheism, polytheism, you name any theism, so Sanatani has accommodated. So I mean, it's such universal. It's so open. It's one would certainly want freedom to explore all of this, and that's what is there in Hinduism. So I think a great session. We should have more and more sessions like this, and fantastic. Thank
Thank you,
thank you,
Vijay.
Narendraji, and thank you, Beluji. I've seen you
Thank
after a
you,
long
Vijay.
time.
Yeah, well, yeah, good to see you.
Uh,
Though today's session was organized by the Yes Talks.
yes,
This
yeah,
is our Aurobindo Ashram Delhi branch. Dr.
right.
Ramesh Bijlani and
Yes.
Arunima
Yeah.
presenting there.
Thank you,
So, yeah.
Bijlani sir, for organizing this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Participants, anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to just thank because I'm going next week. I'll be back in my home, Pondicherry Society. I'm listening from other place here. And very excellent way of speaking. And two words, two Vedic mantras, which we always repeat. Ano Badra Kritavo Yantu Vishwataha. Let noble thoughts come from all. And then another is Ekah Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti. The learned people express it in different ways and most often quoted, and he is elaborating and expressing it in very, very needy for today. I would request, maybe I should tell them personally, that we must take one or two sessions, because that ism word, the actual meaning of ism, Hinduism, this ISM doesn't exist in our dharma. It is always patha, marga, Advaita marga, Dvaita marga, Vishishta Advaita marga, Nirakara, Sakara marga, and it's never ism. And so the Hindu word, I used to ask, I'm an ex-student of Ashram, ask our professors, why is it never mentioned in our scriptures? We have to clarify that point. That's it. Maybe Narendraji and Beluji, can you take up this topic? Because we have to remove the word ism from our Sanatan Dharma.
Yeah, actually, Akka, I
You will
already
be the
told you.
right person to take it because you have elaborate collection. I don't want to praise you in the group. You are my dear brother. So, Hindu, just go and do hypertext. The word does not exist in Ramayana, Mahabharata, Upanishad, Dharma Shastras,
Yeah,
nowhere.
Yeah.
And so, when Hindu word itself does not exist, how can it be a ism? It is Sanatana Dharma. And please clarify to the youth. People keep asking me what is Hinduism. So when I wish you and Beluji are the best people to take a session for the youth. And Bijlani ji, namaskar. Please you take it, because I keep getting this question from the youth.
Yeah,
Who started this ism? Nobody started this ism, Hinduism. Please, can you speak 2 minutes on it, and then next we'll take a session on it.
I actually mentioned in this session that, in fact, I deliberately chose Hinduism. It should have been Sanatan Dharma, but I wanted to emphasize this point. This name Hinduism has been foisted on us by the Westerners. This is not a word that comes from our tradition. It is not there. And this ism business, because they have this, way of expressing Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, they have this because for them everything is an ideology. Ism basically it's a kind of ideology. So they see everything in terms of ideology. So for them Hinduism is also an ideology. Firstly, there is nothing called Hinduism actually in our tradition. So this is a word and nomenclature that has been foisted on us, which we have to, the time has come for us to get rid of it. So that is what I wanted to say about this. And why it doesn't appear in any of our scriptures, well, yes, that's a matter of research. Why it doesn't appear? Because probably we never saw us a race with some identity. we never saw us that way. We saw ourselves as a universal entity. That is why we did not define ourselves with a with an entity, or identify ourselves with a certain entity. Probably that is why the word was never used. Hindu, we never said we were Hindus. We never said that. And because we, like Sri Aurobindo says, because we had no name for that religion, so we could refer to it is the eternal religion. It has been coming down since millennia. That is why it's called the Sanatan Dharma. So I think that's a but yes, why it doesn't appear probably is a subject for research. Yeah.
No, and that's why it is evolved. I mean, we also had certain practices like sati and all that, but I think we've evolved, and that's the reason why people say it's way of life, because at least we are still open, to what's happening around.
No, but way of life, all the others are also way of life. Christianity is a way of life. Buddhism is a way of life. That doesn't give clarity to the issue. That's what I feel. Everything is a way of life. Don't you think Islam is a way of life? It is a way of life.
No, but what has changed in those religions over the years? What has changed?
Well, in Christianity, some change has taken place. Islam is yet to reform itself. Anyway, we'll not go into all that.
Yeah.
That's not our area. Yeah.
Belu ma'am, you have raised the hand. Please go ahead.
Yes, so I actually had some points to, first of all, very good to see you, Ramesh ji, Bhaiya, and Arunima. Only emails are usually our ways of communication too, but to see you on camera is very nice. So I just wanted to kind of make one point in response to what Balaji was saying about Hinduism and the dropping the ism and things like that. If we have to keep the word Hindu, as Narendra ji said, that it has been hoisted and it has a long history in the sense that, certainly the word Indus was there right from Indica itself, the Sindhu, that connection is there. The other word, the other alternative that we should take has a lot of political connotation. So even a closer word would be Hindutva, the Hindu-ness of what it means to, what the Hindu-ness is. But that word Hindutva has become such an abusive word. I mean, it has been abused so much. But I would take that word over Hinduism any day, if I were to take that stance. But anyway, I think the word itself, the religion word itself is confining to describe dharma. So that also we have to drop. Sri Aurobindo, because he was writing in English, he was writing at a certain context, at a certain time period, where, we were still ruled by the Western way of thinking. There was a lot of decolonization of mind, which had started by, people like Sri Aurobindo, as a movement for us to know who we are through his writings. So he did use the word religion all the time. He did alternate between religion and dharma, but he also coined another word as if like to, gently give a slap to the people who like wordism. He coined the word religionism to distinguish between the rigid nature of religion and the free, flexible, plastic nature of dharma. So using Sri Aurobindo's writings can be tricky. His exact words, because that why is he using the word religion? Why he's not calling it dharma? But he was very clear when he used the word religion, he meant in the sense of dharma. He also talked about organized religions versus eternal religion like Sanatan Dharma, which he translated as eternal religion. So there are many, to worry about semantics can be a very long discussion. But I also just wanted to make one point with regard to the way of life part. I don't know whether everything can be called as a way of life or not, but maybe because we had the word dharma. This is just my understanding, and I would really like to know from Ramesh Bhai also as to what he thinks about that. Because we never separated our so-called ordinary life from the idea of seeking higher meaning in life. So everything in English language started becoming, labeled as a way of life. that you start your day with a remembrance of the divine, that becomes a way of life. Unlike organized religions where you have to go to a certain place of worship to remember the divine, while working in the kitchen, you don't really need to, because that's not spiritual life. So that separation was not rigid, was actually not there at all. That's why our English commentators started calling it as Sanatan Dharma, as a way of life, because Dharma is intimately connected with life. So maybe that's why that term stuck over. But just one final point. I don't think sati was ever a part of Hinduism. This is again something we need to do some research into it. There were a lot of social practices. Again, a diversity of social practices was there. But another point, my understanding, because Narendraji, you opened this can as to why it is a way of life. So I just share it from my understanding that where you briefly alluded to that point, actually, where you started talking about the adhikara part, and that there is the three fundamentals. And somewhere in that same essay, Sri Aurobindo says that there is something that only Sanatan Dharma understood, which is that the other 3 points could still be there in other faiths, other ways of looking at seeking of the divine. But because there is there is a great range of diversity in the temperaments at the adhikara point that you mentioned, the rishis, the thinkers, the intellectuals within the tradition also came up with a graded system, which we called as the Varnashrama, or the idea of the Purushartha, which is the social setup that was created as part of the tradition. Again, to emphasize that it is not cut off from life. That was what also made it a way of life, that you follow the Purushartha, the Chatur Purushartha and the Varanashrama system, and you are in a way growing in dharma and walking on the path of seeking the divine. So that's just the way I understood. But I request Ramesh Bhai to share some, put some light on this. Do I understand it correctly or not?
Arunima, now is it time for me to speak, or?
Yes, definitely, sir. Please, we request you to. Yeah.
I thought in case anybody else has to say anything. Well, to establish a background, what I would say is that every religion has 4 basic aspects. One is an underlying spiritual philosophy. The other is the ethical code which that religion suggests. And the third is the rituals and ceremonies of the religion. And the fourth is the myths and legends that grow around the religion. Now, what the question that was initiated sort of by Narendraji, and he asked me to answer it, and also again, Beluji has answered it quite well and still asked me to comment on it, how it can be a way of life. Well, every religion suggests a way of life based on spiritual philosophy, on its ethical code, and on the basis of its rituals and ceremonies. Now, there is a difference, because when it comes to the spiritual philosophy, it would mean that it is an inside-out approach. You undergo an inner change, and that gets reflected in outer life. When it comes to rituals and ceremonies, they are the visible signs of a religion, and that may sometimes give us an indication that this is the type of lifestyle that is suggested. But what is important is that no matter which way we look at religion, whether we look at it as an inside-out approach, as the spiritual philosophy would suggest, or as an outside-in approach, the way rituals and ceremonies would suggest, that is, these rituals may be visible and outside, but it is expected that they would lead to an inner change. So it's an outside-in approach. No matter how we look at it, every religion suggests a type of life, a way of life, which is far better than the way of life that most of us live. And therefore, if only we could live the way of life that is suggested by any religion, the religion of our birth or the religion that we have adopted, the world would be a much better place to live in. The reason why the world is such a wicked and miserable place is because none of us comes anywhere close to, or very few of us come close to, the way of life suggested by any religion. Now, having said that, what makes Hinduism unique is that it also suggests a way of life, and as Beluji said, that it was something which permeated every aspect of life. The way we eat, the way we sleep, the way we eat, the way we cook, the way we do our parenting, and the way we do our studies, and so on. So it permeated all aspects of our life, which means that it is not essential that we also perform the rituals and ceremonies. None of those is essential. And therefore, one can just live a life in such a way that spirituality permeates every aspect of life, and one can call oneself a Hindu. Not only that, I would even go to the extent of saying that the type of freedom that exists in Hinduism is not only that we need not perform the necessary rituals and ceremonies, but even if we do not let spirituality permeate every aspect of our life or any aspect of our life, in other words, we may do anything or not do anything, and yet one can continue to call oneself a Hindu just because one was born into it. Now, this type of freedom does not exist in any other religion, and that's what makes Hinduism unique as a way of life. There are a few points that I would like to comment on are in the complexity, not the chaos, but the complexity in what is come to be known as Hinduism. And that complexity is because it provides for a wide variety of flexibility, a wide flexibility and capacity for adaptation. Each individual is different, and therefore each individual has a way of life available, a degree of knowledge and discipline that would help that person live a better life, a higher life. So one need not adopt as the goal the ultimate union with the divine. One who is ready for it can work towards it. One who is not ready can start at where he is and then move in that direction. For that person, also guidance is available. So while each individual's journey is different in terms of where one starts and the type of conditions and circumstances the person gets for moving in that direction, the ultimate destiny of each one of us is exactly the same. Doesn't matter what conditions and circumstances we get and how many lives we have to spend to reach there, but the ultimate destiny is manifesting the divinity hidden within us completely, or as completely as is possible in something that is manifest. So that is the ultimate destiny of each one of us. And but at the same time, there is the guidance available for everyone depending upon that person's swabhava and swadharma and his present level of consciousness. So that individual, to a large extent, individual guidance is available. And not only that, there is enough possibility of adapting it to different periods of history, different places in the world. And although belief in God is central to the Vedantic tradition, but one can be even an atheist, and there are atheistic philosophies among the six that you talked about. One can be an atheist and still continue to call himself a Hindu. So with that type of flexibility and capacity to adapt to time and place and individuals available, some complexity is inevitable, and therefore one has to be able to digest that complexity. The reason why Hinduism is subject to so much criticism is because it is not well understood, and one does not easily accept the degree of complexity which is essential for giving that character, that unique character to Hinduism. And this criticism comes not only from those who are born into other religions or who are not very familiar with India, it comes from the Hindus themselves very often, and those Hindus call themselves rationalists. But then how rational is it to criticize something, to misunderstand something and not really be ready to look at what it actually is. Having seen a large number of people coming to even a place like the ashram, where is a self-selected population coming, you rarely find more than 10% of those who come here have read even that basic, rather small, seductively small scripture, the Gita. They have not even read it. Not even more than 10% have read it, even once from cover to cover. Just read, leave aside, understand, or act upon. They have not even read it. And yet they feel entitled to criticize the religion in which they are born. It's too complex, it's too confusing, this and that. But have you made any effort to try to understand it? That is what is important. Now, coming to one of the questions that was asked, that is one of my favorites in the Gita, and I enjoy explaining it because while it expresses the ultimate truth of what is called Hinduism, it also is a very dangerous doctrine, and that is Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja, which comes towards the end of the Gita in the 18th chapter. Even in the 18th chapter, towards the end of the chapter. Now, what does it say? Sarva Dharman Parityaja. Give up all dharmas, abandon all of them, forget them all. Looks very surprising. How can a religious scripture itself say that abandon all dharmas? Now, but that is exactly what it says, because dharma here is used in a sense of what is right and what is wrong as told to us by the Shastras, as told to us by the scriptures. Forget all that guidance on which you have depended so far. That is what Arjuna is told. Forget all that guidance. Take refuge in me. Mamekam charanam raja. Take refuge in me alone. Not in any of the scriptures that you have read, the Shastras that you have read, to seek some guidance about how to live, what to do and what not to do. Instead, take refuge in me. Now, what does that mean? That doesn't just mean surrender. It also means do what I am saying. Not just a passive surrender. Do what I am saying. If I'm telling you to fight, fight. Without thinking about anything else, without looking at any other guidance. Now, why it is a dangerous doctrine is that anybody can say, well, now I've surrendered to the divine, I have taken refuge in the divine, and therefore now I need not follow any Shastra, I need not follow any code of conduct given in the scriptures. But then see where it comes in the Gita. It comes in the Gita towards the end of the Gita, which means that Arjuna becomes entitled to follow that doctrine only after he has mastered what is there in the previous 17 chapters. And therefore, before one says that I'm entitled to do what I like because I have taken refuge in the divine and therefore I can do whatever I want, I don't need any guidance from any other scripture or shastra. Before a person says that, the person has to make sure whether the person is qualified to do that. So that entitlement is important. And this is sort of something which I always enjoy explaining, because this is such a strange looking shloka in the Gita that many people are even afraid of translating it correctly. They say, how can a scripture say abandon all dharmas? But that is exactly what it says. But then we also have to understand why it says it. Why it says it is because one gets entitled to it after one has understood what is there in the previous 17 chapters, after one is able to depend solely on the guidance of the divine, which Arjuna could easily have because Sri Krishna was in front of him in flesh and blood. What about those of us who do not have that privilege? We have the Krishna within us. And that is what Sri Aurobindo and the mother have emphasized, that when you feel entitled to do that, listen to the voice of your psychic being. That is our Sri Krishna within. And then you don't need any guidance from anywhere else. But then, because most of us are not at that level, when Sri Aurobindo was asked if the psychic being is telling me to do one thing and the mother is telling me to do something else, what should I do? Sri Aurobindo said, do what the mother says. Because to be able to identify correctly the voice of the psychic being is not easy. It's very easy to have some sort of convoluted reasoning and say that, well, this is the voice of my psychic being, even when it is not. And just because it helps us do what we feel like doing. And one can pass it on as the voice of the psychic being. But the fact is that that is the culmination of what we are expected to do, what should guide our life in terms of what has come to be known as Hinduism. And that's why Sri Aurobindo says, this is the only religion in which the highest scripture resides within you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bijlani, sir, for sharing your wisdom with all of us. Okay, so before we close today's session, let me inform that the recording of today's session and all the other Yes Talks that we have every Saturday evening are published on our YouTube channel, Yes Spirituality. You can visit the channel and explore content on yoga, education, spirituality, and related subjects like psychology and wellness. Narendra sir, thank you so much once again for sharing your insights. And participants, thank you for joining us today. We'll close today's session now with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.